pick up and move to superhero genres and go over a couple of the more popular games in that genre. I'm going to start with Mutants and Masterminds. Mutants and Masterminds is somewhat similar to a previous version of D&D. You play superheroes. They have a specific setting that you can put it in, but you can also put it in your real world, your own fictional setting. You can have Paradigm City, or you can play in Millennium City, wherever you want. You can play in Cincinnati. Most superhero games are conflict-centric, meaning there is probably going to be some investigation, but eventually it comes down to mano a mano with the big bad, and you have the power to go against them. And there are various systems that do this in different ways. Mutants and Masterminds allows you to build a very detailed character. So if you want a character that turns into a whirlwind, you can create that character in Mutants and Masterminds and some other systems. If you have a character that splits into multiple people with different personalities, you can create that in Mutants and Masterminds and other systems. The big thing about superhero systems is they need to have a good powers system. There are lots of superhero games out there that kind of gloss over superpowers, and that makes them okay, but if you're going to have a superhero game, you're going to want to have the cool powers. There is an exception to this, which we're going to talk about next. We're going to talk about another Powered by the Apocalypse game called Masks, and Whitney's going to chime in about that.
Yeah, so Masks it won a few awards, and my gaming group had tried to play a lot of superhero games, and we just really didn't like how they did powers and how they did, I don't even know how to explain it, like how like you could build a character so that it was like, well, I want a character that can phase and shoot that phase as like a light beam, but that wouldn't really work well with a lot of the superhero systems out there because they were very, very rigid. Like you have the power to teleport and that's it. So then we found Masks. And like I said, it's won a couple of awards and it is a Powered by the Apocalypse game. So it runs on that rule system. So you have your playbooks and your move sheets, and it's pretty open. So with Masks, you are playing teenage superheroes. You're in high school. And if you think that sounds very young, it really isn't. Especially like with the games that I played, like we explored a lot of very adult aspects of things. So as you would expect, any teenager that has a magical power or things like that, that's a superhero, you're going to kind of get into that world. But building a character and getting up and off the ground and ready to start a game, we literally had our session 0, built our characters, and had our first encounter in one sitting. So with your playbooks, you have about 10 playbooks, and then your character sheets kind of look like this, and they kind of fold over and they look like books. So that's your playbook. So I played a bull, and then you really just kind of go through. So with your playbook, you then go through and it says your look, and then you just circle things how you want your looks to be, what you want your abilities to be, what your labels are. And your labels are really what helps you when you talk about your story when you're trying to do a move. So if for example, I'm a bull, and one of the bull moves is in a china shop, and you directly engage a threat. That's my skill. That's my power. I can just directly engage. But to be able to tell the story and say how I engage, how I try to get into this fight, how I run to them, how I try and fight with them, all of that I tell by a story. And then I use my labels to help me. So like I have, let's say my label for savior is a +3. and I say, this person is attacking this sweet old lady. I'm going to bull rush in there and use my bull in a china shop. I get a +3 to roll because I said that I'm going in as a savior and I'm using that ability. So it's how I tell the story to build my dice pool. And it's a lot of fun. A lot of fun, like hilarity ensues because it's open. But what I love the most about this as a superhero system is that, as I said, like my special move was in a china shop or physics. What's physics? I can explain how I want to do over the top superhero abilities, and I'm not stuck to a rule of, oh, you can only like run in and punch like Hulk. You can't run in and have somebody like Iron Man spin you around really, really fast and give you extra punching power when you throw in to a fight. So with masks, you can do something like that. You can build off of the other powers in your group. You can explain things. You can do over the top story power abilities and superhero abilities to then play your character. So you're not limited to all you can do is phase or all you can do is teleport, which is what I've experienced a lot. And I don't like those types of limitations because I don't know about you, but every time I read a superhero story, how Cyclops or Storm or somebody actually fights and how they conclude a battle is never the same. Like it's very different and it's always evolving. So that's why I like masks, because it is very much like that. And every time you play, it's almost like you're resolving in a different comic book.
Whitney, what other media resembles masks?
Okay. So the Teen Titans, the original Teen Titans, not Teen Titans Go. And so a lot of like the comic books, the simple issues, and then like your more of like your cartoon comic TV based shows. Is that kind of what you were asking?
Yeah, Young Justice, Young Avengers, Young
Yeah.
Justice being the big one that I kind of focus in on, because it's not about fighting villains. I mean, it is, but it's more about the relationships between the characters. And
Oh yeah.
yeah, and that's the big driving thing going on in Masks, is all about the relationships going on in the team.
Yeah, like on your actual character sheet, like this whole section, which is literally the third thing you do, is you build your storyline. So it's when your team first came together, how did you come together? And the entire table has to figure out like, how did we all meet? How did we all become our own team? In relationships within members of the group, like who's your best friend, who is the person that you compete with the most, things like that. And then those relationships also build into the story. So as a in my group, we had two characters that were from rival football teams. They were the quarterbacks from rival teams, and the school got like hit by a bomb during the game, and we all kind of came together to fight the bad guy at the same time. But because they were from rival teams, even though we worked together as a superhero team, they were always trying to one up each other. So when we were fighting in a battle, the chaos that ensued because they were always trying to outcool the other one was just ridiculous. But it was really fun because they played into that part of their character and their relationship while being teenagers in the story while getting the fight done.
Very good. I'm going to talk about Hero System with the game Champions. It's one of the original superhero games. It has gone through 6 different editions, each one changing just a little bit, trying to get a little bit more balance. It is one of the most simulationist types of games I know. They have rules for just about everything. So if you want to know how much you can lift, there's rules. If you want to push yourself to lift more, there's rules for that. If you want to turn while you're going really fast, there are rules for that. The best part about Champions is creating exactly the character you want. You can create any known superhero, your own thing that you've just come up with in your head, the power system is absolutely open and ready to go. A word of warning, it is heavily math intensive. So you may have to have a calculator or some sort of program in order to create characters. It does not have a lot of skills as a basis. It just has skills that you sometimes use, but it's very much combat centric. You're going to come into conflict and you're going to have battles on a map, and you're going to knock people back and knock people up, and you're going to run them out of endurance and all sorts of other things that are very cool superhero things. But it doesn't really lend itself to narrative play that much. You can play it that way, but it's really more of a combat-centric, tactical type of game. And I've played it somewhat, but I really believed that it deserved a mention. There are other ones that came out around the same time, including Mutants and Masterminds, Villains and the Vigilantes, that have similar systems, but Hero System has really taken it all the way to the extreme as to how you build powers and build characters. And it is possible to build extremely broken characters in Champions. By putting all your points into certain things and creating, he can blow up the world from his ICU bed where he's the only person who can survive. But that's all he can do. And it's pretty broken, but sometimes that's fun. Sometimes it's fun just to come up with those broken character concepts. That's what we have on superheroes. Superheroes is another really broad category like horror is, where there's lots of variety. There are more Powered by the Apocalypse systems that cover the superhero genre. And there are also more light systems that cover it in a more fun and casual way. We're